The tunnels beneath Thalos Prime were a labyrinth of silent dread, no sound, no breeze, not even the comforting rhythm of his own breathing inside the helmet. Silas had stopped checking his oxygen levels. If the moon wanted to kill him, it'd have to try harder. The rifle hung across his back like a patient dog, ready to bite. His footsteps were deliberate, spaced irregularly to keep from echoing patterns. Not that there was much chance of that, the place swallowed noise like a starving god. He paused at a junction. The path forked 3 ways, each identical, dim lights buried in the walls, shadows that didn't move, air that didn't stir. He closed his eyes and listened, not for sound, but for sensation. The kind of instinct that had kept him alive long after protocol and training had failed. Left. He turned without hesitation and walked into the dark. The silences didn't patrol like soldiers. They lingered like thoughts, unmoving until observed, then swift, violent. He spotted one ahead, its cloak hanging like the universe's mourning shroud. It hadn't seen him yet. He crouched and unlatched a capsule from his belt, a simple glass marble filled with liquid ammonia and shards of mirror. He tossed it forward. It shattered in front of the silencer, not with a bang, but with a ripple of reflected light and temperature change. The creature twitched. Its faceless head rotated in jagged, unnatural increments. Before it could lock on, Silas dropped it with a single shot, clean, centimass. The bullet tore through robes, metal, silence. He kept moving. As he pressed deeper into the facility, the architecture shifted, walls curved where they should have met at angles, and doorways narrowed as if designed for something not quite human. He passed etched murals, symbols of silence, ears crossed out, mouths sewn shut, eyes wide open. The Empire didn't just want obedience. It wanted surrender of identity. His breath hitched as the floor began to slope downward, leading into a room where sound finally fought back. Soft whispers curled at the edge of consciousness, not in his ears but in his head. He spun around, rifle raised. Nothing. No movement. But the air felt denser. Psychic resonance, he muttered. It was starting. The core wasn't just suppressing physical communication, it was infiltrating perception, rewriting thought. It didn't jam transmissions, it severed the will to send them. He opened a pouch and retrieved a cassette player. Flicked it on. A scratchy recording played, Johnny Cash with a guitar too close to the mic, a warbled version of God's Gonna Cut You Down. The static was a blessing. He clipped it to his collar. The whispers receded. His thoughts cleared. And that made him smile. The passage narrowed until he had to duck. Then, ahead, a shimmer, the kind you only noticed when you weren't looking. A field. Not a force field. A mind field. The silence core's last defense. He stepped through. Pain stabbed into his skull. Not physical. Not electrical. Existential. The core showed him a reality where he'd died on Mars. Another where he'd surrendered command on Io. A third where he'd silenced his own men to spare them suffering. Regrets that weren't real. Memories that weren't his. He staggered forward, growling through clenched teeth. You're not real. I am. The rifle grounded him. Its weight. Its certainty. Steel didn't lie. The illusions cracked. He emerged into the core chamber. It wasn't what he expected. No machines. No humming reactors. Just a giant humanoid figure, seated on a stone-like throne, unmoving. Wires snaked from its spine into the walls. Its skin was pale, translucent, face eyeless, lips gone. A living amplifier. A silence monk, amplified into godhood. It opened its mouth, no tongue, no sound. Just pressure. The air thinned. Silas dropped to one knee, bracing the rifle. The psychic pressure built in waves, trying to compress him into quiet oblivion. The mixtape warbled. Cash kept singing. You can run on for a long time. Silas smirked. Then fired. The bullet didn't make a sound. It never did. But it struck true, just below the creature's neck, into the base of the spine. It spasmed. The wires hissed and sparked. A high-frequency vibration rippled outward, collapsing the chamber's illusions like glass under thunder. The monk twitched once, then slumped. The silence broke. Not into noise, but into something worse, panic. Klaxons blared across Thalos Prime, artificial but desperate, like the facility itself had started to feel fear. Doors unlocked. Lights changed from blue to red. Silencers activated across the moon like a colony of disturbed insects. Silas exhaled. He chambered another round. They heard me. And for the first time, someone would come looking. Silas ran. Not because he was afraid, fear was a luxury he hadn't indulged in since the Europa siege, but because staying put meant dying creatively. The monk thing hadn't been the core. Just a vessel. A puppet with no strings, now slumped like spilled wax. But shooting it had triggered something. The entire moon was waking up. Lights stuttered. Sirens howled in confused, offbeat shrieks, wrong frequencies, mismatched pitches. Not alarms designed for ears. These were warnings for minds. As he sprinted through the tightening corridors, walls pulsed with unfamiliar glyphs, some glowing, some bleeding light. The core wasn't just technological. It was biological, even mythological. A structure built not just to mute speech, but to erase intent. And now it knew his name. His boots skidded across a metal floor suddenly slick with condensation. The air was warming. Not from heat, but from friction, like two realities scraping against each other. His breath fogged the visor of his helmet, and for a brief second, he saw something behind the glass. His own face. But different. Younger. Scarred. And smiling. Not now, he muttered, smacking the visor with the side of his hand. The hallucination faded. A door loomed ahead, sealed tight. He dropped to one knee, slipped the cassette tape from his collar, and pressed it against the sensor pad. Analog interference still worked where digital logic failed. The door stuttered, then grudgingly groaned open. Behind it was a hangar. Or what had been one. It was half-collapsed, scorched by something that hadn't used fire. Rubble lay like sleeping animals, twisted and unkind. But in the center, perfectly untouched, hovered a sphere. Jet black. Vein-ridden. Whispering. The core. It hovered 5 feet above the ground, held aloft by gravitational repulsion or pure arrogance. Tiny arcs of static leapt from its surface, tasting the air, searching. Around it, the walls had curved inward like the room was slowly being devoured. He stepped forward. And the sphere spoke. Not with words. Not even images. Just sensation. Every regret. Every betrayal. Every time he'd hesitated on a trigger or pulled it too quickly. It used memory as a weapon. He didn't resist. He let it come. Pain was familiar. So was guilt. But pain couldn't change a bullet's path once fired, and guilt never stopped him from reloading. He knelt and unslung the Widowmaker, whispering as he calibrated its scope by hand. "You're not the first god I've shot at." The sphere pulsed. Gravity increased. Blood rushed to his skull. Capillaries burst in one eye, the human one. Still, he adjusted his aim. And waited. There it was, center mass, just below where the seams converged. A weakness disguised as elegance. He fired. The core flinched. Not visibly, not physically, but the pressure vanished. The whispers cracked. And suddenly, the room wasn't as invincible. But it wasn't over. Silas stood, coughing blood, vision blurred. The core rippled, split, and from its center crawled a shape, tall, hunched, wearing no armor, no robes. A creature born from the very silence it imposed. Its body was starless black, flickering at the edges like static against the void. No eyes. Just presence. It stepped forward. Each movement rewrote the air. It didn't raise a weapon. It was the weapon. Silas circled. It mirrored him. Not perfectly, deliberately wrong, like it didn't fully understand motion. That was good. Gave him time. Gave him options. "Do you feel that?" he said aloud. His voice echoed. The silence was breaking. The creature flinched. "You've been the only voice here for too long. But the problem with silence is, it doesn't teach you how to listen." He reached for his last round. Custom forged, uranium jacketed, with a sliver of his own extracted bone embedded at the core. Some called it superstition. He called it a signature. The creature lunged. He dove, rolled beneath its swipe, and fired as he spun. The round didn't just hit, it entered. The creature convulsed violently, like static caught in a thunderstorm, limbs distorting into symbols and screams that had no source. It stumbled back, then erupted into fragments of shattered silence. The core dimmed. The hangar groaned. Somewhere above, the surface cracked. Sunlight, actual, golden sunlight, broke through a fault in the ceiling. Silas lay flat, exhausted, staring up at the light. He wasn't done. But the core was. And now, someone needed to hear what came next. The transmission crackled to life as Silas climbed from the broken belly of Thalos Prime. Static danced across the channel, but through it, he heard a voice, frantic, disbelieving. Is this? Are you alive? He thumbed the comm switch. Depends who's asking. Command. Earth sighed. We lost you for 72 hours. Silas scanned the alien horizon. Jagged rocks, blood-red skies, and the scentless wind of a silenced moon. Felt like 70 years. The comm paused. Then, did you complete the objective? He looked behind him. The hangar was gone. Swallowed. Not by an explosion, but a collapse in presence. The core hadn't just died. It had withdrawn. The silence had been broken, but not destroyed. Something had recoiled into deeper space, licking its wounds. I put a hole in God, he said. Don't expect him to be dead. Just pissed. The line went quiet. He sat on a ledge, watching as distant support cruisers broke the upper atmosphere, silver and deliberate. Rescue wasn't for him, it was for the evidence. The black box of a mute moon. The political proof that Earth had defied the Empire's prime directive, do not speak when ordered to silence. Do you understand what this means? Command said, their voice lower now, reverent. Silas rubbed at the dried blood beneath his nose. Yeah. Means they'll be listening now. The silence was no longer a passive suppression. It had always been a weapon, one of control, of psychic conformity. But now it was exposed. Earth's refusal to obey had cracked open the myth. A single soldier had spoken with bullets what diplomats couldn't utter. The cruisers landed with mechanical grace. Soldiers disembarked, cautious, scanning the terrain with rifles raised and orders hot in their ears. Silas didn't move. He waited until one of them approached, a young woman in fresh armor, eyes too wide for a battlefield. You're the sniper, she asked. He stood, stiff and slow. Silas Ward. Retired, repeatedly. Guess it never sticks. We thought you were dead. Give it time. She held out a hand. Not for shaking, for support. He took it. As they walked toward the cruiser, she asked, Why'd you do it? They told you not to go. The council didn't authorize this. He smiled without humor. They also told Galileo the stars didn't move. Turns out, people in chairs are often wrong. You risked a war. I started a conversation. She didn't reply, but he saw the ghost of a grin behind her helmet. Inside the cruiser, techs were already analyzing what little footage his helmet had recorded. Most of it was corrupted, overwritten by the core's minefield pulses. But one file remained intact. The moment he spoke into the silence. Just 6 words. They heard me. Let them come. Command requested a full debrief. He denied them. Not out of insubordination, but because words weren't the point anymore. Action had been the argument. And the proof was in the echoes still trembling across the system. As the ship ascended, he looked out the viewport. Thalos Prime shrank below them. Silent again. But not empty. They'd come back. Empire forces. Diplomats. Priests of the quiet doctrine. But now they'd know, Earth could answer. Back on Earth, things moved quickly. The footage leaked. Some said it was deliberate. Others blamed rogue agents or whistleblowers. Didn't matter. The result was the same. For the first time in 100 years, the Galactic Empire stopped talking at Earth and started listening. Not with respect. With fear. The silencers had ruled with psychological dominance, never through open war. They crushed resistance before it could form. Ideas were their battlefield, and silence their sword. But Silas had changed the terrain. Now, Earth spoke through myth. He became legend. Children whispered his name in schools. Militias painted his silhouette on bombed-out walls. Philosophers dissected the meaning of resistance in silence. And somewhere in the void, new voices emerged, planets long suppressed, now emboldened to speak. Not loudly, but clearly. In one of Earth's hidden orbitals, Silas walked alone through an old training dome, empty, lights flickering. No medals hung here. Just rows of worn-down targets and simulated gravity glitches. A voice called from the shadows. "You made quite the mess." He turned. The woman who approached was older than she looked. Eyes like knives, posture like coiled wire. Direct to Vashti. His old handler. "I made history," he replied. "You made enemies." "They were enemies before I ever pulled the trigger." She studied him. "They'll retaliate. You've embarrassed gods." He shrugged. "Then they'd better speak up." She almost smiled. "And if they do?" He looked past her, at the endless stars. "Then I'll listen. And maybe, just maybe, shoot back." Silas hadn't meant to start a war. He'd meant to carve out a pocket of truth in a galaxy that had forgotten how to speak it. But truth has edges, and the galaxy bled quickly. The retaliation came silently. Of course it did. The Empire's answer was not missiles or dreadnoughts, it was a virus. One that didn't infect systems or bodies, but language itself. Words began to fail. Not everywhere, not at once. But on remote outposts and deep space colonies, reports trickled in. Entire stations where communication broke down, not due to tech failure, but because people forgot how to speak. Not just their mouths, their thoughts. Command called it neural silence. Silas knew better. The Empire had found a new way to weaponize obedience. They blamed him. "I told you this wasn't over," Director Vashti said, her voice a knife wrapped in velvet. She slid the data slate across the table. The file blinked with red urgency. He didn't touch it. "They're silencing from the inside now." She nodded. "No transmissions. No survivors. Just quiet." "So we hit back." "How?" she snapped. "We don't even know what this is." "I do," he said calmly. "It's fear. Their systems are reacting like a body exposed, turning inward, defensive. But that's not a defense mechanism. That's panic." She leaned back, studying him. "You think they're scared of you?" "No. They are scared of what I represent." He met her gaze. "Someone who doesn't listen." Outside the station's windows, Earth was a blue marble wrapped in storms. Peaceful. Vulnerable. 100 satellites blinked above it, watching, listening, waiting. Silas rose from the table. "Prep the Widowmaker. You're not cleared for another deployment." "Then don't clear me." She didn't argue. 2 days later, he dropped from orbit in a one-man stealth pod, slipping through Imperial blockade lines like a shadow with teeth. His destination wasn't a battlefield. It was a temple, floating in high orbit around the Empire's central world. The quiet citadel. A cathedral of silence, where laws were written not in text, but in the absence of dissent. Every policy passed here was enforced not through debate, but erasure. And somewhere inside it was the source of neural silence. Silas landed hard, bones rattling, eyes burning. He stepped into the citadel through a maintenance port, weapon in hand, purpose in blood. Inside, the corridors pulsed with quiet power. Priests of silence floated inches above the floor, their faces blank, their robes humming with telepathic distortion. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Silas made himself loud. Each shot cracked like a heresy. Each priest dropped like an outdated belief. He moved through the temple like a storm through scripture, relentless, untranslatable. At the heart of the citadel, he found it, the singularity throne. Not a chair. Not even a machine. A presence. It didn't speak. It unspoke. A void in the shape of awareness. It pulsed with authority, the source of the neural silence, the wellspring of suppressed rebellion. He stared into it. It stared back. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, voice steady. The air thickened. Thought warped. His memories twisted, moments of victory reimagined as mistakes, losses exaggerated into finalities. The presence wanted to override him. He let it try. Then he pulled the cassette player from his chest. The tape had warped. Burned. But it still played. Static. Then a voice. His voice, recorded during the Thalos Prime descent. "I don't listen well. I never did." He threw it into the Singularity throne. The presence screamed, not in sound, but in absence. Reality convulsed. The floor split. Time fractured. But Silas stood firm. One bullet. The last round. He'd saved it for himself. Instead, he loaded it, aimed at the pulsing center of silence, and whispered, "Listen to this." He fired. The citadel cracked. Not just the walls, the doctrine. Across the galaxy, people woke with language on their tongues. Colonists spoke again. Commanders gave orders. Children cried out and were heard. The presence evaporated. Silas fell to his knees, empty and alive. When he awoke, he was aboard a rebel cruiser. Vashti stood at his bedside, her tone unusually soft. "You broke their god." He blinked. "No." I reminded it that it wasn't one. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered, no longer silent, no longer watching. He'd spoken, and the galaxy had answered.